So we're outside of Compound Solutions, one of the premier ingredient marketers, distributors, a ton of different things that they do for the broader kind of nutraceutical industry, both on more the active nutrition side, but also like the health and wellness side. We're gonna be talking about all the kind of evolution of the business. They've been around for 25 years, which is crazy. I've known Matt for I think maybe 11 or 12 years, so only about half of this. So I don't actually know a lot of the story before that. And I'm interested to kind of hear that evolution from his parents' business and all that. But we're gonna be heading in there, we're gonna get a tour, we're gonna be checking everything out, we're gonna sit down with Matt and kind of go through the whole history and the evolution of the business, because I think it's gonna be extremely interesting for everybody that's worked with them or are thinking about working with them. Ding, 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 ding. I was like, doorbell, doorbell.
What's going on?
Come on in.
So appropriate. So appropriate. Man, I wish the shirt were off. The audience would love it, man. They'd be like, man.
I would have so many subscribers. I'd have to like beat them off the stick.
Yep, sometimes I gotta beat the ladies off with a stick. Back, woman! Back, I said!
Exactly. I think you'd just be crushing it right there. I'd be like, man,
I'd have to change my whole career, I think.
Yeah, Josh equals, or like do the collab, the Josh Arnold, collab. That'd be good, Josh plus Arnold. Yeah, there he is, the man, the myth, the legend. Josh, no, I was referring to.
Oh, thank you.
Let food be thy medicine, right?
I agree.
That's what we're all doing. We don't talk about it often, and everyone talks about it here and there. That's a good constant reminder.
There's some momentum building around food as medicine and just getting back to the roots. Like I've even been seeing some of like the major grocers. I think recently maybe even Albertsons launched something where they're putting some tech layers in there to try to get people to go back to thinking about food as medicine and how important that is. You've been an advocate for a long time, but now it seems like the world is finally catching up to you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe catching up to hypocrisy.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I was like, yeah, I just stole it.
Yeah. Well, everything's like an ebb and flow, but yeah, Whole Foods is definitely flowing.
Yeah.
It's definitely there. It's funny, we try to make, like some story about like sirtuin's kind of cool, right? Yeah. Or NAD plus or something like that. Yeah. Or name other probiotic or something like this. And you're like, you can be really good, like broccoli. You're like, let's start with broccoli. Right. So you end up like doing all these like complicated, convolutions, and you're like, how about we just like went for a walk and had a friend?
Yeah.
These are, just so powerful, but we can kind of.
I feel like a lot of times I love hearing you talk, because though you're in the space and you could be easily pushing all these like super advanced things, you're like, let's just do the basics. Like, can we get back to just eating some great fibrous vegetables, like going for a walk, get some sunlight? Like, let's start with that. Like, if we could cover that, we're probably going to push everybody forward so much in a healthy way.
Exactly. And I think it's partly just, philosophical, but also, our whole country cannot sustain what we've been doing healthcare-wise. We're spending more than everyone else, combined. And we're going to bankrupt the nation if we don't change course. And our course is always drugs, not exercise. And there's no drug or supplement that's ever going to outperform exercise. So can we say that from the actual presidential level?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care, any politician, I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, can we just say, let's all start with a walk? Can we have a whole country go in a collective walk?
Can we agree on something basic like that? I know.
Exactly. And then we'll be like, wow, this is amazing. Our chronic diseases are declining. Our ability to fund Medicare is more substantial. Yeah, I think that's just, it's the basics. We're in the supplement industry. We're supposed to be supplementing.
Yeah.
What are we supplementing? Hopefully Whole Foods. Let food be thy medicine, and then, this is what we're trying to do, like ingredients to maximize human potential. Because I think like when you have like when you're just trying to make money, it's hard to figure out what you're supposed to do day to day. But if you're trying to maximize human potential, you're like, should I distribute sugar today? Should I distribute fructose? Someone needs to do those things. It's just not going to be us.
Yeah.
So it helps narrow what we're not going to do, which sometimes can be as powerful as what to do. Wow, I just really love the double biceps or whatever from Arnold, and like the precision or the balance, being legs and arms and all that sort of stuff. But actually, when I think of Arnold, I think of like every shoe that I've ever bought, or every piece of clothing, or every house, or any car has been partly due to him, and he establishing the industry that we all benefit from.
Oh, okay.
So I actually, like, when I look at my car, I actually think a little bit of Arnold. I'm not actually kidding. Yeah.
That's funny.
So like, if I can pay for college, it's because he established an industry that I benefited from. So I just have like a little constant reminder of a thank you for not just his intensity, because that wasn't an accident, right? But the fact that you and I are making money because our predecessor Arnold. So thank you. That's a little thank you, right?
Thank you, Arnold.
Thank you, Arnold. A little ode to Arnold.
Thank you.
And that is just like a representation of just caring so deeply about everything. So, Theodore Roosevelt, man in the arena, we just want to be dirty if we fail or succeed. But we don't want to be on the sideline, because that person on the sideline cannot be at compound. We just can't be those people. You just have to be in the arena. And we care about everything, including the health of our bees, because if you don't have bees, you got nothing. If you don't have water, you don't have nothing. It's really just about caring deeply about everything, from the bee population to the water, to clean air, and to each other. Because if you look back to history, we're better together. Bees are about being better together because we're taking care of them and they're taking care of us. It's all symbiotic. So it's just caring deeply, and that's what that's about.
I just thought, what an interesting piece of art. I was like, Adam. I was like, because I don't know, you guys aren't selling like honeybee powder or anything. I was like, maybe there's something that I don't know about here.
No, but we would. And it's just like, it's a representation of like, what would a child do? That. But what don't we do as adults? That. It's so clear to a child. Children speak with such precision. Like, they're like, Dad, you smell. And you're like, that was blunt, but wow, on point. I do happen to smell right now, right? But they're like so clear about like, the health of bees, and like, don't we need those to like, pollinate? Yeah. So are we taking care of them? No. So why not? And just a mic drop moment. It's like, your go over like, gosh, it's been 25 years.
Yeah. When they said 25 years, I was like, it's a long time.
It is.
And I also think, I was playing this back, I was like at Muscle Farm, that was when I first got to know you, and that's even like 12 years ago. Which feels like yesterday. Like in my mind, when people were playing this back and they're like, oh, you've been in the space for that long, I'm like, it's been that long?
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
what? Who? Like what? Me? I'm like, I just feel like I just started. Like, what are you talking about? It's like, but even, I guess I've been in a small way a part of the company for half of it, but there's a whole other half that I wasn't around for that, started in, 98? Was that?
Yeah, exactly.
And this from your parents were the ones that, and it was Compound Solutions, that like from the start, did you not have to change the name or?
No, it was from the beginning.
Okay.
Obviously my dad and mom came up with it. It might have been my dad, but obviously a collaborative effort, but from the day one.
And what was the original intent for the business when it first was launched? Day one, what was like the goal?
Really distributing raw materials. At the end of the day, I don't think there was a highfalutin idea. I think my dad, I don't know if you know, would start off at Seltzer Chemical, which is now Glambia.
Oh, wow.
So he was the guy years ago who actually bolted a vitamin E spray dryer into the floor and figured that out, right? And vitamin E, like powder, obviously vitamin E is a fat, right?
Yeah.
But vitamin E powder, you put into like animal feed. You can do it in the human industry. And so he was working on that with Seltzer Chemical and then expanding into other lines, like colors, because you could have a colored tablet, for example. And even in the animal feed space as well, and food space and things of that sort. Well, he just wanted to go out on his own. He's always been like a risk taker. And he was like, now I guess is a good time. And he was older, like, not old, but I mean older to take an entrepreneurial leap.
Yeah.
He was maybe between 45 and 50.
Wow.
And just put it all on red, just risked it all, really, to go out on his own. And he had a really good friend at, called Bernd at BMP, Bulk Medicine Pharmaceuticals in Germany, who actually lent him materials on consignment. Amazing story. Wow. Like, no one does that.
Yeah.
No one's like, here's $100,000 worth of stuff. Just pay me whenever you sell it and you get paid.
Yeah.
It's all good. That's how good my dad's reputation was.
Wow.
That's how trustworthy. So he started off supplying raw materials, and it was mostly like mass market. So think like amino acids, so like infant formula companies or something like that. He had some really, really good connections and reputation after decades in the industry, but just want to do it on his own. So that's really the story of I just want to do this myself. That was the genesis. My mom was like, I absolutely don't want to be an entrepreneur. I don't want to go out on her own, and I don't want to be in this business if you do. And so my dad did it, and she worked with my dad. And my mom to this day is like, he dragged me in. And then I started, after going like full mass market. So he was, from what I understand, the first white guy to tour a CoQ10 factory in Japan.
Okay.
He brought CoQ10 to the United States, and he started supplying that to like Pharmavite back 25 years ago.
Wow.
Like back way back. It was like $5,000 a kilo, and it was so expensive back then that it was like 25, 50 milligram doses. Now it's cheap and you can put 200 milligram doses at Costco. So anyway, he brought CoQ10 to the United States. It was a synthetic method. The natural won out, and hence Konica is now, giant, hence Kingdom Way, hence, all the others, right? Yeah. And so he was working with CoQ10, working in the mass market. I came in 18 years ago. I realized, man, there's a lot of sports. There's just a lot of sports nutrition happening. Way back, there was a particular distributor supplying just massive amounts of creatine. I was like, there's got to be something more, right? We got to get into this. It was maybe just literally a month or two into it, I just started calling everyone you can imagine in sports. This is maybe before, you might not remember, a company called Physogen.
I do, yeah.
Physogen, back in the day, we started supplying their oratates, like magnesium ораtate. This is like the OGs of like sports nutrition, right? Like, so we were supplying that, and I just was trying to go deeper and deeper in that space, and I said, it's beta-alanines. Having a talk with my dad, he's like, oh, I know Mark Ledoux. I'm like, oh, okay. So no joke, Mark Ledoux, CEO of NAI, we have the full-on story, like so stereotypical. It's no joke at Denny's in San Marcos, like 20 minutes from here. Legit at Denny's, on a legit napkin. He's like, hey, the cost's gonna be about here. The price is gonna be about here. We good? And at that time, I literally looked like Doogie Howser. It's so funny. Now I'm older. I actually look like an adult. Back then, I looked like I was 12. And Mark was just like, all right, like I'm supplying like 2,000 kilos a year to, to EAS, kind of like, all right, whatever, like can't get worse, right? Let's do something. Let's let this kid, see what he has, right? From there, I just was an absolute beast for 80 hours a week for probably a decade. It was a monster. I don't recommend that for your relationships. And yeah, we got into like, first was NO Explode. So that was like the big turning point was carnosine, beta-alanine, NO Explode. So I always have a shout out to BSN and those guys back in the day. Appreciate those guys. And then another turning point was probably Jacked. So Jacob Gessler back in the day. That thing was a behemoth. I don't think to this day people realize how staggeringly giant that was. Hundreds of thousands of units every month. It was just wow, those are some days. Then another turning point at the end where we broke up, and I was like, hey, look, we want more of that money. I was like, that's disappointing. So obviously they took it back over, but I think the turning point right before that, another turning point was ProSubs. Back in the day, they were doing some volume of that pre-workout. The Jekyll and Hyde. Hyde was just, it was a cannon. Like, it was going off like a rocket, and I think people underestimated how powerful that was at its peak.
Yeah, I feel like it rode a little bit of like the pre-workout wave, like you said. I mean, I know there were pre-workouts before NO Explode, and maybe it's my bias because to me that was the start of pre-workouts. So it was like NO Explode. That was the one that I think I took first of a pre-workout, and then beta-alanine was kind of put into all those products, and like you said, you named a few of the ones that like just kept building on the momentum of the ones previous than that. And that category now is such a monster category, but it started off being nothing, almost like nothing. I mean, it was like something somebody created. They were like, hey, we should do people need to take this pre-workout energizer or whatever.
Exactly,
like stuff all these things in there. Now it's such an integral category of sports and active nutrition is like people's sometimes entry point outside of protein is like, if it's going to be a proprietary or like a different product that's not like a single source thing, it's like they go with pre-workout because they think that's going to be what they need. So Blue Raspberry, NO Explode, me and my buddy went half on a tub because we were poor college kids at the time, and we were so excited to have this. And we, at the time, this was also like when shaker bottles were kind of just becoming a thing, and like we mix it up, we're shaking it up, and it like exploded all in our college like apartment kitchen, and it was blue stuff everywhere. And typical like two dudes living in a place, like we didn't even clean it up, so like weeks later people are coming over like, what's all that blue like stuff out here, whatever. We're like, It was a pre-workout. It exploded.
Yeah.
Like literally, it's called it exploded. It exploded. So
Yeah.
you're like, that's what it's supposed to do. But it was like
Yeah.
those bicarbonates or whatever that were in there that
Yeah.
kind of like created them with the shaking. We didn't know because like it was such like everything was so new at that time. There was and again, like, there wasn't the internet at the time in the sense of like you can't go on social media and see 300 other people doing the same thing and all this. Like so there was you were learning on the fly. And you were trying to figure this out.
Exactly. I did the exact same thing. Definitely did the explosion. But yeah, it was cool. Like I had a really good time. It was really intense. And I think it started off at 2,000 kilos a year. And I think by the time we ended, it was on a run rate of more than 1 million kilos a year. It was not like uncommon to be sourcing, supplying 80, 100, 120 tons in a month. It was just wild. It was a fun time in sports nutrition. And then frankly, like the whole industry professionalized. Like there wasn't like that bro science. It might still exist, but it just declined, I guess you could call it. And so we started getting into like T-creatine and dynamine. So the mind's role in physical performance. How does dopamine affect a workout, for example? And now it's like if 1 gram of tyrosine is good, then maybe 10 grams of tyrosine is even better. Like blowing out dopamine receptors. You're like, dude, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Just listen to Andrew Huberman. Like, come on. Like, this is not rocket science. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. That's what T-creatine's for. T-creatine really took off with C4. Say when that got a NutriBullet, obviously that was inherently credible.
Yeah.
Right.
What was the in between of losing, the business with Carnicin and then having something that came and replaced it? Like
that was
or
branch chains.
Okay.
So we were supplying branch chains to Extend.
Okay.
And my McCandless was crushing
it,
Extend. Yeah. I mean, that was just incredible. Yeah, I'm actually proud, man. 25 years, we haven't, there's like not losing money in a year and you're kind of cool with that. We haven't lost money in a month. Not a single month.
Wow.
So like we haven't lost money in a year, obviously, because you can't lose money in a year if you haven't lost in a single month. So even despite losing one of the biggest ingredients ever in the history of sports nutrition as beta-alanine, even the month after, we didn't lose money.
When you took over, what happened in terms of like the business metamorphosis? Like what did you when you came in? I'm sure like as a like a young brash, like I got a ton of ideas. Like what did you come in and say like this is what we're doing? Like was there anything that you were like I'm gonna champion, I'm gonna change the business? I know like shifting towards sports, but like was there things that you said this is gonna be me, I'm gonna own this is gonna be what's going on?
When I came in, it was really obvious that we need to be in sports. So that was the first change that I made that my dad wasn't involved in at the moment, was going towards sports nutrition. And that was the heyday. Like when we got in, it was big time.
Yeah, because if you think about, depending on how people remember that time, and again, I wasn't a part of the business side at that time, but sports nutrition as an industry was still super new and still very much like much smaller than what it is today. Like like by many fractions of where. So even you having the foresight of saying we need to go into this area, I think this is going to be an area that's going to see considerable amount of growth, I think should be applauded, because I think that there is a little bit of vision that you had to see there, because it could have went wrong. I mean, your dad could have been like, no, we're sticking to mainstream, vitamin mineral supplement categories. We're not going to deal with the sports nutrition stuff that's still trying to kind of emerge out there. So like, was that something that you saw that was risky, or was this something that you said like, this aligns with me as a person, I think this stuff's cool, so I want to take a shot and be in it?
Yeah, it was I think it was a combination of things. Usually decisions aren't oftentimes so black and white, it can be a little gray. It was one had aligned. Like I thought it was cool. I'm a skinny guy, but I was always like athletic and kind of into it. And I was like, hey, do I want to be selling something for a joint formula, or do I want to sell a pre-workout? We're like dudes just crushing in the gym and like just like super intensely. And I was like, I don't look the part, but I kind of like dig the guy or the woman like getting after it. Like, let's get after it, right? I want that guy. Because the joint formula guy was a little bit robotic, not so fun. So it was a little bit of money. Like you could see the financial, you could envision what the future was, which is kind of what you're talking about. I could see the future in that sense, like what you're talking about. But I also thought, man, this is a lot more fun. Then the second thing was probably commodities. The Chinese were brilliant. They're like, hey, look, I'm gonna go to Supply Side West, understand your audience, but stay in the background. And then they're like, you know what? I'm gonna make it convenient for you. I'm gonna put a warehouse there in the United States. And then they're like, I actually know who your clients are. I'm just going to start supplying directly, right? So it's like this slow march of a decade in which your potential slowly just eroded. So the second thing was just going toward patented, trademark, better marketed, better researched ingredients. We don't sell, I don't think anything that we've ever sold. Like our past, like 7 years ago, I don't think we sell anything that we used to sell. Like 7 years ago, I completely transformed the entire industry, every single ingredient, and how we operate. The next one after that was thinking about how to maximize human potential. And when you think of that, you're thinking of gut health. And then you're thinking of what's the foundation of gut health? You're thinking butyrate. So we're thinking about really how do you maximize human potential? What do you do? So I started going into every avenue, every pathway in which the human could be optimized. That was probably the last and major, pretty significant deviation in our whole strategy. Yeah.
And that's been built around core biome, and then some of the other fibers and things that you guys have been working with, some of the sweeteners and things of that nature. But it's all based around, if it's gut health or gut friendly type of things, to make sure that that's kind of the vessel. Because I think that's again another foresight where you saw that there was going to be a emerging amount of science, and it's going to unlock a bunch of that understanding that now I think people are starting to get how important the gut is to every element, every part of the body's function.
Exactly.
But it wasn't. And maybe this was coming from somebody that doesn't necessarily read a lot of like the scientific journals and all that stuff. So I still think about maybe even 5 or so years ago, that was sort of bleeding edge, thinking about the gut as this super important part. Now it seems like everybody's focusing on gut health. It's like how do we improve the gut microbiome? Like how do we do that? But at the beginning, I think when you were working on that stuff, it wasn't necessarily as obvious as it is today. Like now that people are getting into it, now it's like you're a little bit later to the game. Like people have already done a lot of the hard work to show that it's valuable and the consumers are interested in it. But when you were kind of initially doing at least core biome, like was it hard at least to try to get people to wrap their heads around, especially with like being so far into like sports and active nutrition and then switching it over? Was there a little bit of like what are these guys doing? Does it make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. Like no one cared.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, this is really cool. And they're like, so what? I was like,
what do I do
this is why what? And they're like, okay.
Yeah.
Like no. Okay, could you buy it? What is it again? Explain it. And they're like, oh, okay. A little bit of a disconnect.
Yeah.
And so, I think we started on this like 6+ years ago. And so it took probably a year or two for someone to take off. And then it was probably 4 years after that. So they took off, so that would have been like 5 years ago-ish. They probably had a run rate of probably 3-4 years before people were like, oh, that's selling. Yeah. I should probably do that too.
I think
it took a while.
And I also think there's a little bit of a silver lining of what happened in 2020, that all of a sudden, I know that the movement of sports nutrition into active nutrition has been going on for a while, but I feel like there was this event that happened that made people think about their health holistically and not just like one-dimensionally of like, hey, I'm trying to ramp up my heart rate for this physical activity, or maybe I'm trying to recover from this physical. Like they were thinking about this as like, okay, there's more hours in the day than just the gym. How do I think about that as a whole? And even people that were, hardcore sports nutrition people, or even brands, started to think about, well, wait a minute, we are way too leveraged on one, occasion. We're not thinking about our customers' whole health, and how do we do that? And then all of a sudden consumers are interested, and then it's like this perfect storm. I know that's like not a, it's hard to look at silver linings on something that happened like that, but I do think that was a turning point that was even a propellant for some of the stuff, because you were early on it. So now all of a sudden people are like, oh, now it makes sense.
Yeah, some of it I feel like is really timely now. Maybe we weren't so early, I guess, or maybe the time is just perfect. Like for example, think of COVID, what you just said, and the pandemic was like, oh yeah, let's rock elderberry and vitamin C. 100%. But those are exogenous. But no one's like, you know what? How about the endogenous stuff? Like, how about like SOD catalase and glutathione? Peroxidase. So we haven't like touched on like antioxidant enzymes. And they're like, okay, well, let's say we did touch on antioxidant enzymes. Well, are we just boosting? Are we supporting? What are we doing? Well, the gut is obviously the home of the immune system, or majority of the immune cells, right? I think there's a place where we could say, hey, well, now is the time to start talking about how I support myself on a daily basis versus boost it on an acute, I have a cold right now.
Yeah.
Like, zinc, vitamin C the second. So yeah, I think now is the time. I don't think we're too early. Like, let's do it. Let's say 7, 8-ish years ago, we transitioned, maybe 9, transitioned from like commodities to like patented trademark, ingredients. Because the writing was on the wall with the Chinese, right? And just other bigger players. Then about 7 years ago, I co-own it with my mother. I'm majority owner of Compound Solutions. With my mom, I dig that. That's kind of cool. I get to have like a board of directors meeting with my mom. It's cool. I dig that. So anyway, she essentially retired 7 years ago. Kim Sickinger, our president, came on. Frankly speaking, internally, everyone knows I'm not the best manager. You just have to know what you're good at. Yeah. And like, I'm never gonna dunk a basketball like LeBron. Yeah. So guess what? I don't. Yeah. Right? So I don't manage because she's a LeBron James, she's the Serena Williams of management, right? Yeah. I'm not. Yeah. So I just think about what we should be doing from a big picture vision standpoint, and then she helps implement it. So that was 7 years ago, and she helped get the company going in a single direction, like maximizing human potential, it's the common good, establishing the culture, the drive essentially as well. Like, let's get in the arena. The only reason why I don't clean the toilets is because we have someone else to do that. But it doesn't mean I wouldn't. I'll do it right now, right? So we have a culture of doing, right? We don't throw things over the fence. We actually do it all right now, the second, together. And when there's a problem, I jump in. I don't tell everyone it's their problem. Yeah. So we have a very strong culture of like, when there's an issue, I jump in and everyone else jumps in. And it's like, oh man, I screwed that up. Oh man, bummer, let's do this together. So she helped create that. Kim did. We started going down this line of like just better management, and then we got into like, if you're gonna manage this well, can I do some other cool things too? And she's like, well, let's just see what we can do. So like, typically you have a birthday, you're a small company, so you have a cake. And I was like, but we're in the health space, can we like just give people money or have like fruit? And she's like, come on, Matt, are you serious? Fruit? Like, this is a birthday, like, come on, man, are you being like the food, like paranoia food man? She's like, all right, give me a minute. So she figures it out, and now we have like money or fruit or something like that, right? So people don't want fruit or whatever, we can bring in lunch, or they can take money now. So for their birthday. So it's like, here's, I don't know what it is, $100 or $200, or we can have lunch for the crew, right? And they get to choose. And then she was like, oh my gosh, you're making me sweat. Like, what the heck is it? What are you doing? And I was like, well, vegetables. He's like, I cannot force people to eat vegetables. You are killing me, Matt. Like, what are you doing?
You're like, Dad. You're like, Dad. You gotta eat your vegetables. You can't
like,
come to work.
Are you kidding me? Like, people are feeling like self-conscious, like sticking their tots in their pocket. You know what I mean? Like, can't I just have a cupcake on my desk? You're like, you're out of your mind. I'm like, well, how about we provide fresh organic vegetables every single week for every single person? She's like, okay. I was like, I met someone at the farmer's market who could probably do this. So next thing you know, and what are we, 5 years later, 4 years later? I don't know how long it's been. We provide fresh organic vegetables, a box of them, every single week to every single employee.
Wow.
At Compound Solutions. And then I was like, well, that was cool. Yeah. And I was like, well, healthcare. I don't want to be the one at the top, because if you're at the top and you're alone, then you haven't made it. So can everyone have the gold plan or whatever, like the PPO or whatever it is? Everyone gets the PPO, and we pay for all of that for the employee. Every employee gets all fully paid healthcare, and then we subsidize if their their other family members. Again, I get to travel, but what about everyone else? We took every single employee and their spouses to Hawaii.
Wow.
Last year at a really nice resort. I don't know if it was a week or 10 days, something like that, probably a week. And then just like crushed it, helicopter rides. Wow. Like, we just went bananas, like made sure they had like the time of their life. And then I was like, that was really cool, but it's the US. I was like, who gets to go internationally, right? Like, not everyone can afford that. Yeah. Let's make this happen. So now the whole company this year is going to Thailand. So every employee and their spouse. So it was mostly about the common good. So this whole thing was about, can we have an organization that has a culture about that we're better together than singularly? And can we spend the money to do so? And so we just are bent on making sure that our money is where our mouth is, and that we make sure that our employees are happy, that they have the healthcare that I have, that they have the fruits and vegetables that I have, that they have the travel opportunities that I have, that I love that we are better together. And we continue to donate to like foundations like Ron Finley, if you know that guy, calls himself the gangster gardener.
Okay.
Uh,
I like the
in
name. I like the
LA,
brand.
he's such a good dude. He was just in an AT&T commercial, but you know, but in LA, all about fruits and vegetables. Ron Finley Foundation, good guy. But we continue to donate with him and things like that sort. So yeah,
I mean, I think
common
it's
good
like
stuff, cultural.
Yeah, that's just important. I mean, because I think it's one thing to talk the talk, but you're walking the walk.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, you're all about it, which I think is super important. Which the authenticity is like one of those buzzwords out there, but it's like you could tell the difference.
Oh yeah,
the people that
intense.
are like talking the authenticity thing, or the people that are just like, we don't need to talk about it, we're just gonna do it.
Oh yeah, I'm subdued. You can tell. Like we have like 4 million a minute sort of stuff. We have stuff on LinkedIn, but you don't see me out in the industry. I just want to do stuff. We want to do stuff. Our whole company is like this. Yeah.
I think business, the world, like, and even I have to battle this a lot of times. Is like I would rather be in the background and not know anybody. I mentioned it before. Was like when I first started doing content because I wanted to give back to the industry, but I did just written articles, and because of that, nobody really knew my face or me, and I was happy with that. And even when I would, as a consultant, I think we're going on now 11 years. Like, there's an aspect of that you have to be comfortable with the people that you work with, as they're the ones in front. They're, I don't take any of the credit for anything that I do. It's that I've, maybe I've done 0.1%, and I'm happy and humbled that somebody would allow me to do that, but I don't really need to get any of the credit of like, I was integral in creating this, or I created, like, I don't really talk about any of that stuff. But I know as, the world, I guess, has changed in terms of people needing to maybe be more boisterous on some of that stuff. You have to get a little bit more comfortable, which I think speaks to even you creating some of that content stuff too. I mean, maybe it's not super normal to do it, but like, I have to do a little bit of it, and I have to, kind of put myself out there, because that is the expectation. Now, kids are so used to just constantly capturing themselves all day long. They're like, their whole days are documented, where we are kind of coming at it differently, where we had time when we knew that we didn't have any camera phones or social media or whatever, and now we're trying to like get into it and play the game, I guess, to the best we can. A lot of times people think you have to put on a show, or you have to be a character or whatever that is, and I think it comes back to being like your authentic self, and you have to really do that. And if you do that, then it comes out through the camera, it comes out through the whatever, or the people that don't, eventually you get shown, I guess, the opposite thing. But it's been something I've had to like tackle myself as well. Yeah,
it's uncomfortable. That's why we have a team. Michelle's like, we're redoing that. That was not a good scene. You guys wear a different shirt.
Cut. Done.
Yeah, cut. No, don't do that.
Sometimes seeing where things are going, feeling comfortable enough to like go for it, and I think on your side as an ingredient supplier, or there's aspects that you have to make bets long periods of time. It's not like you're the consumer brand that like next year you can change up what you're going to focus on or whatever. Like, you're saying, hey, I believe gut health, or I believe this is going to be fundamentally one of the most important things that I can focus on, because if I look back 10 years from now, it's going to be 10x what it was before, and I need to be important. I need to be in those important areas, and I think that like when you're looking forward, you're probably making those bets that are longer than just what is the market dictating tomorrow, or what's it dictating next year. You're thinking about it as like, what does it look like in 2030? Like, because I need to be there, and I need to be laying the groundwork, because how long it's going to take for the sales cycle, the education cycle, all that stuff, for people to kind of get there in that direction. Because if not, then you're going back into like the commoditization aspect. You want to be forward leaning, you want to be innovative, you want to be like, I was championing things before they were the thing that everybody has. You want to have a little bit of that groundwork, I think.
That's exactly. If the consumer is ready for it now, we're too late. Because you might have to get regulatory compliance. If you need grass, you're going to need a minimum of a year, because if you need toxicology, you need a few $100,000 and to get those trials done and get it through toxicologists. That is not instantaneous. So let's just say it's a year, and that's like lightning speed, what I just told you. Because what if you need an efficacy study on top of that? So let's say it's lightning speed a year, and you just said that the consumer, or I just said that the consumer is ready now. Now we're a year behind the ball. So you definitely have to be thinking ahead. Something that might be a little different for the audience to just think about, which they had to have thought about it, but maybe not so consciously, it's just that ingredients are the foundation of the entire industry, right? When you think about like a functional orange juice with calcium came from somewhere, right? The consumer's thinking about it from the brand standpoint, but the brand's looking at it from the contract manufacturer standpoint. Contract manufacturer's looking at it from the ingredient standpoint, and then the ingredient supplier is looking from like the manufacturer standpoint, right?
Yeah.
It's all flowing, right? So if we don't think about it ahead of time, that brand doesn't have the claim or the ingredient to lead with, at the grocery store for the consumer. So yeah, absolutely. I take that really seriously, is like what's going to happen in 2030. What you just said, 100%. That's, in my opinion, my primary job. And predict it so when we spend the money, that it's not for naught, because that's a big bummer, right? Like you guess wrong at the end of the day.
And I think that a lot of those steps, what you're mentioning, it has been shielded behind, or maybe just consumers haven't been all that interested in learning about all those different, like they know the brand. Few cases, maybe they know the manufacturer, but a lot of times they don't. But past that point, they don't know too much. Every once in a while, maybe they get into the ingredients, maybe they don't or whatever, but they haven't really gotten to all the steps backwards. And when I think about some major changes that could happen, I do think about if it's blockchain or something where like traceability turns into a very easy thing to do, and understanding who are the people that are making the product, who are the people that have the ingredient, it's a lot easier for a consumer to do the research to figure those things out and understand those things. And it makes a lot of what you're talking about with your history and your heritage and like all this kind of focus on the good and the human potential, like that then is really consumer forward. I think a consumer then cares about that because they start to follow those dots. That they can research into you and research into your company. Like you want to be aligned with all of these different steps. Like the contract manufacturer should be aligned with the ingredient supplier, should be aligned with the brand, because they're speaking a certain language to the customer. Like if it's not all aligned, like there's a little bit of an issue that comes up over time. Now, maybe not so much, but I do think in the long run, it's going to be something that creates a lot of issues, because a lot of the supply side, I don't think is necessarily thinking about that. They've always thought, well, we're behind the curtain. Who cares about our ethics? Who cares about our business practices? Who cares about, we're just a cog in the wheel thing, where I think it becomes super important over time as some of that transparency becomes easier to kind of trace through the steps. And some ingredients within our bigger food supply has already went to some of that stuff. If it's like palm oils or things like that, where people are started to like really care about some of that stuff. But I do think over time people just start to care about everything. They're gonna, you were talking about before with the bees, we should all care. Like everybody's eventually, people, because of the ease of whatever, if it is technology or whatever, they do then start to care about everything. It's just, we're just not there yet. But I do think that's important what you were mentioning about how all those steps are in play and how long it takes, and how you have to be making sure that you have the most high ethics and morals and focus on these bigger, broader stroke things, because people are going to eventually judge you against those things.
Oh yeah, I think we're there now. Like a while ago, GMP is required that we disclose really prior confidential things for traceability. Like Mega Food put like a camera in its manufacturing facility. Ritual Vitamin, Katerina, is like on a mission on traceability. She's on a traceability sort of campaign, not because that someone hadn't done it sooner. It's just that people didn't like grab on with full force, and is driving her crazy. And so she's like, all right, Ritual Vitamin is going to like dominate this, And so we as the ingredient supplier have to make sure that we are supporting that.
What do you see the next 25 years looking like? I mean, obviously, you're a soothsayer, like trying to get your magic ball, but what does the next 25 years of Compound Solutions look like?
With the help of the spirits and my tarot cards, I can see your life even more clearly than you can yourself.
That was like one of those Oprah questions that I'm like hitting you with at the end.
Yeah.
Get the cry out of there.
Exactly. We can cry on camera. I'm cool with myself. When I think of the next 25 years, I think about being flexible. So doing more of what we do, right? So more supply. But when I say flexibility, there's always some level of chaos in the world, right? And there's always some challenge to overcome, and that will never change. And it could be something like a pandemic, or it could be a war, or it could be economic. So I think to set up a company and systems that are flexible enough to adapt to change better than competitors, that I think is probably the next 25 years.
Have you ever thought, like kind of how I mentioned, like I've been in the space now for like 12 or 13 years, like do you sit back and you go, it doesn't feel like that long? Like I know you weren't a part at the start, at the finish, but like pretty much most of it all is like, do you look back and go, it doesn't feel like that long? Like it feels like just yesterday that I was, sitting in that meeting looking like Doogie Howser.
Yeah, exactly. To me, it feels about like 10-ish. I've been in the 18. It feels like about 10-ish, because I'm thinking about like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, okay, it was like the beta alanine thing, and there's a teicoplanin, and then it was a gut thing, and then it was like, you know, new management at compound and culture, and like, and I flip it through, I'm like, yeah, it's about 10. I'm like, it's been about double that. So I think, I don't know how you feel about it, but it feels about like I'm running about double speed.
Yeah.
Than actual.
Yeah, I like lose track of time at all. I have no idea. Like when people are like, oh, it's already April. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Felt like I was just
well, I was just saying January.
Yeah, I was like, what's going on?
Yeah, what's going on?
That's weird that you said January 30th because that's my birthday.
Oh, there we go. I was
like out of nowhere, like all the dates you could have said. Houdini over here.
Yeah, exactly.
January 30th.
Exactly. Just
so, doing some research, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
We're like connecting on levels that we don't even know.
That's
it's like
exactly. Get the vibe.
Good vibes, yeah.
Good vibes.